Hello, Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, Adab, Kasakai, Kedwala hai. This is Abha into the spotlight. Welcoming you all in my program Spotlight with Abha. Today, I'm here to bring Mr. Santosh Kumar into the spotlight, who is Dean of School of Liberal Arts and Management Studies at PP Savani University, Surat, Gujarat. Right? So, welcome, Mr. Santosh Kumar, to my program Spotlight with Abha. Right? Uh,
Thank
how are
you.
you feeling today?
I'm great. Simple
Okay.
as that.
So, shall we begin?
Amidst this, yeah, please.
Yes. So my first question is, I just want to know about your childhood and your education background.
Okay. Childhood had been, to begin with, I recall my father was, he's still there, but he was working with the Indian Railways and he was a highly placed official with the Indian Railways and he was a technocrat, basically. So essentially, my childhood was spent in several places because every 2-3 years he would be transferred. So what happened at that point of time, I did not understand. And our education was also in multiple places, right from Bengal to Odisha, all these places I was educated. Uh, Now when I look back at my childhood, I think it was very rich childhood because in this particular process, I was exposed to multi-cultures and multilingual people, because the railways, Southeastern Railways particularly, it has people from Andhra Pradesh, Bengal, Odisha, and he was also being transferred to all these places. So I have grown up with many languages basically, and I can speak Bangla and many other languages just like my second mother tongue.
Wow.
So this actually has given me a very rich experience, and this probably happens with any central government employee. That you are exposed to different kind of places. So there are many cultures which is there within me, and this I can feel because I can then connect with many people so very naturally that as if it was me, always part of them. So this is the childhood. I grew up in studying in railway schools to begin with, and then my mother was little concerned about our education because she felt that because of my father's very frequent transfers, my education was not taking a kind of good shape. So I was admitted into Kendriya Vidyalaya, Vayusenanagar, Nagpur, where actually I grew up. So that was my second home. Uh, and but in the meantime, I was also joining my parents for some time, coming back. So I've studied in several Kendriya Vidyalayas. And Kendriya Vidyalaya, again, you know that it's a multicultural space where
I am from
people and
Kendriya
teachers.
Vidyalaya only.
Yeah, I know. So you said that. So point is, Kendriya Vidyalayas also offer you a different kind of multicultural, multilingual space. The teachers and the students, they all come from all over the places. But the real hostel life began for me in Kendriya Vidyalaya Vayusenanagar hostel, where this independence in my personality, where I would listen to everybody, but decide everything on my own. This was something which I gained in the hostel, at a very young age, and this has stayed with me all this while. This has become integral part of my personality that I would listen to everybody, but finally I would take my decisions. So my decisions would be my decision. So whether I'm getting credits for this or I'm getting discredits for this, finally I take the ownership of that.
That's
This has
true.
happened with me since very childhood. And this was the hostel life. Then I went to do my undergraduation in Delhi University in political science honors. Uh, People were not very happy with that, but then it was again my decision. I was a very good science students and math students. So in spite or despite of those kind of things, I chose to get into social sciences, though I did not have any understanding of what social sciences actually mean. Because prior to my first lecture in what is political science, the only connect with social science was 9th and 10th class CBSE, civics books,
Yeah.
where I had known something about the president and the prime minister, etc. parliament, वगैरह वगैरह. So I went to study political science. So in the beginning, it was, I was feeling extremely lost. Why I'm here, what is it that I'm doing, and what is going to be the future of all these kind of things. But then it was young age, and again that streak in my personality that since you have chosen it, so be with it, and come what may, you have to do best into that. So I was studying political science in Delhi University, one of the finest colleges of DU in South Campus. Uh, in the meanwhile, alongside, I was also doing lots of summer job. I was giving tuitions to the 11th and 12th students, not because I was not being supported by my family, but then I thought if I can become independent and reduce the burden of some people somewhere, it's good for me.
Great.
So doing all kind of jobs, but never compromising on my study. So once the graduation was nearing, I was not very sure as to what to do. So many of my classmates in Delhi University, they were already going into some other kind of job, in the sense that they were going for management education and, so again, my personality streak, somehow I was trying to understand that it was more research oriented than management or those kind of things, administration oriented. So somebody suggested to me that I should look at Jawaharlal Nehru University, because that is where uh, one can get a better kind of education, and most important thing in Delhi was place to stay. You see, so JNU though was one of the wonderful places to study at any point of time, but for me, more than the place of study, a place called hostel was equally important. So hostel would be a place where I can stay in Delhi for many more years and also study. So that's how JNU happened to me in 1987. And then I was seeing that there was a kind of direction which I was getting in JNU towards academics, towards research, and then, multidisciplinarity in your study system, uh, as against, I would not say against, but as compared to the singular discipline and focusing only on one discipline, was something which was very interesting in JNU. So when I was pursuing my master's in political science, we had an option of looking at different other disciplines also as an elective, and this was all credited course. So what happened, like many of my classmates, they took electives in political science itself. I was little more adventurous, and I went to do my electives in history, geography, economics, sociology, international relations, so on and so forth. But then in this process, what happened? I was able to connect my own subject along with other disciplines. All those disciplines were also taught in a very interdisciplinary manner, which further strengthened my own conviction and my own understanding of my own discipline. So this particular way of teaching or this particular pedagogy in JNU basically strengthened that intellectual, it's also satiated my own intellectual craving for the knowledge in a very, very interdisciplinary manner. Uh, then, of course, what happened was logical step was Master of Philosophy in JNU and then PhD. So when I was pursuing my PhD, I had an opportunity to go to University of Glasgow on a Government of India's British Government Fellowship. So that took me, it took me to Glasgow, and I could finish my PhD, in a very nice manner. I was very fulfilling exercise, basically. Those days, of course, it was very painful because one was not used to the kind of rigor in the research in UK universities and all. But then we survived the PhD, and then today, when I look back and when I'm guiding my own students, I generally tell them that, look, this is how you have to do your PhD. I mean, this is absolutely non-negotiable. So this is how my education was completed from childhood in the railway school to University of Glasgow to do my PhD. And then this entire training, believe me, has taught me that PhD was only a kind of stopgap, in the sense that I was finished with a degree.
Mm.
But then this entire urge of learning,
Mm.
either in my own subject or in different subjects along with my subject or independently of any subject,
Mm.
that has always stayed with me. And
Mm.
then I do not consider myself to be a teacher, even today.
Mm.
I always consider myself to be a co-learner, and
Mm.
this is an ongoing process. I mean, everybody says that we all are learners, and learning is a lifelong
Never-ending process.
experience.
Yes.
It's a lifelong process. This is fine, but I look at it in a very different manner. So whenever I am invited to teach in a university, a special class or a special lecture, I'm quite excited before the particular experience. Once I am there as a teacher, then obviously I have to be a teacher. But before that, that goosebump or that excitement that how is that new class going to be, whether this is undergraduate class or postgraduate class or the classes of the professionals, the same excitement and the same thing, how I'm going to be learning from my students or the co-learners in this whole process stays with, it has stayed with me. So
Great.
this is how my educational thing has happened so far.
Okay. So now
Yeah.
coming to your career, right? As now you are Dean of School of Liberal Arts of Education and Management Studies, right? So how did you pursue your career and what was your journey? And of course, I would also like to know about the challenges you have faced during your career.
Yeah. So soon after I finished my PhD, I was looking for obviously jobs in the research sector or the education sector, because that was another logical step. So I got opportunity to work with various research organizations like Center for Science and Environment. I was also engaged in some of the grassroots organizations in Mumbai and in Nagpur, etc., etc. So I was basically a researcher for these organizations. So many organizations basically require people with PhD degrees to document or to write the report for them to in the initial phase of after PhD, because I did not have a kind of job I was looking for. Uh, I was into those kind of things. But soon after, my first proper stable break came from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, which was my first job in 1997. So my career started in Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Now, the problem was that I was a student of political theory with specialization in erstwhile USSR. And then Tata Institute of Social Sciences was an institution where social science teaching was very important, again from multidisciplinary and cross-disciplinary perspective. Because all said and done, it was an institute for social work. And social workers must understand the social science. Now, my own understanding of social science from the political perspective and from the perspective of USSR was a bit of challenge for my own self. But then again, that streak, that you have to be there and you have to prove yourself. So I started looking at the interdisciplinarity from the perspective of the grassroots worker or the social worker per se. And then, I just said that I was studying all those kind of subjects along with political science in my master's. So I did sociology, economics, etc. That knowledge base was coming in as a major backup to me, because a social worker must understand the economics and the sociology and psychology, cultural anthropology, everything. So while you teach them the political aspect of the social sciences, you also tell them that this is political, only political is not sufficient by itself. You also must understand economics. You also must understand sociology, anthropology, cultural space, everything. So it becomes basically an interdisciplinary social science for the people. Now that was my journey into social sciences per se, in the real sense of the term. And then since I was also a public policy person on which I had done some kind of work through my research, and they all were published in the initial days of my engagement in the active academics. So if I say that I'm a public policy person or teacher or a practitioner, it all started with then, because policy dimensions of the society or economics is a very overarching, is an overarching kind of scenario. You know, everybody is working with some or other kind of policy. So slowly and gradually, I started looking at the other things. So one of the, one of the very important research that me and one of my colleagues, Dr. Ramesh Jare, did was the policy about recall of the elected representatives. Now, nobody has thought about it at that point of time at the grassroots level. We did it, and because of our research, the major portions of the policy of government of Maharashtra had to change. Now, I consider that to be a very, very effective way of looking at the policy and policy intervention as an academic. And that was the whole journey of being a public policy person. And then I was looking at several policies at international level, national level, so on and so forth. So until 2007 or 2008, I think I was with the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. I was working with international organizations like UNDP, the World Bank, etc., looking at the grassroots level policy formulation, implementation, etc., touring the entire South Asia. All those kind of things were also happening alongside. And it was a very fulfilling life. But then I had to leave TISS for some reason. And then I shifted to Gujarat as one of the, lateral entry bureaucrat or whatever you call it, as a senior researcher in the Ministry of Labor. And I was supporting the policy formulation in the area of health and overall governance and for the government of Gujarat. And I was also the research project head of a government of Gujarat sponsored or supported research organization. But then it was not happening in the sense that I was not very happy with my contribution to the public policy understanding. And I wanted an active academic life as well. So I shifted my job and I went on to become the chairperson of a management program, which was to train cadre of the NGO-based managers. It was called Postgraduate Diploma in Management of NGOs. So that is an institute called EDI, Entrepreneurship Development Institute of India. So there I was working, I converted the course into 2 years format, etc., etc. So that was one part of the job. But then the major break again came in my career when I shifted to Pandit Deendayal Petroleum University as the senior professor in the School of Liberal Studies. Now that is where I got exposed to this entire modern concept and nomenclature of liberal studies. For me, I consider now today, when I look back, I consider myself to be actually a product of the liberal studies pedagogy, though we did not know the name of liberal studies per se. Because in Delhi University that happened, in JNU again that happened. So when you are being, when you are being trained under people like Professor Yogendra Singh or Professor Prabhat Patnaik or Professor Shireen Ratnagar or Professor Romila Thapar, obviously your perspective has broadened so much.
Yeah.
And this is what is liberal studies. So you start applying everything from the perspective of other disciplines in your discipline. Now, this was when I started actually practicing liberal studies. When I was teaching at Pandit Deendayal Petroleum University, I was the departmental head for the Center for Public Policy and Administration. We initiated the major at undergraduate level in those subjects, masters and PhD. So at all these levels, and then I was also engaged with lots of research activities and mentoring and supervising the PhD students, so on and so forth. So lots of things are happening. So until 2014, December, I was with PDPU. And in the meantime, Flame University, the very renowned university in Pune, which was the first university in this country to actually have started liberal education in our country. FLAME was an acronym for Foundation for Liberal and Management Education. So the name itself was the focus, you see. And I always wanted to be part of the space where I could further be trained into the liberal studies theory and practice under people like Indra Parikh. Now, she is one person I still given an opportunity, I would just like to be associated with her and understand, the worldview, because it's a different kind of world altogether. Liberal studies is not a subject; it's a way of looking at the world, and it's basically interconnectedness that you need to establish in the domain of knowledge creation and assimilation of that knowledge and practicing of that knowledge. So uh, that particular opportunity was something which was kind of very strong urge within. So while I loved my own discipline of politics and public policy and public administration, and I was contributing in UGC, in UPSC, and still member of these kind of organizations. I was setting question papers, this, that, touring the places, lecturing, all those kind of things were happening. But there was something inside, which was missing. And the missing part was this entire understanding of the concept. So when Flame invited me, I didn't want to leave PDPU, but then I thought, let me make a shift, let me take a change. So I went to Flame, and this was a different kind of experience for me altogether. Because even now, after spending 5 years at PDPU, I was not able to understand really, though I knew that public policy, my own discipline, is a very multidisciplinary discipline. And my mental guru, Professor Yeshkal Dror, he said that design and public policy are the two disciplines of the future. And I still believe very strongly in that. The more I read Dror, the more convinced I am about what his thought was. But then when I went to Flame, I was teaching the students of public policy major who are also minoring in psychology, who are also minoring in economics. They were also minoring in environment. They were minoring in English literature. And then I had to make the entire discipline of public policy relevant to them. Or they were majoring in those kind of subjects and minoring with public policy. So how do you establish this connectedness at the level of theory, practice, assimilation, everything? This was a kind of life-changing experience for me. I taught at Flame for nearly 4 years. And then in the meantime, I was on lien with various other universities. Also, I would be visiting those universities, Jindal and all those kind of places. All these experiences were giving me a very definite kind of shift in my own thought process. And then more I was exposed to this, more I was convinced that in the age of Industrial Revolution 4.0, if your education system is not corresponding or reciprocating to that or being supplement to education, Industrial Revolution 4.0, it is not going to be relevant for your students 10 years hence from now. And I'm very much, I'm a firm believer in this entire education 4.0. Because at every space, at every phase of this industrial revolution, the education system has been corresponding with that requirement of that industry. Ultimately, that is the engine which moves your society forward. Now, this came with an opportunity, and this also came with its own challenges for me, because then I had to upgrade myself every time. So at one point of time, we were looking at how to use artificial intelligence and virtual reality to teach public policy. Now, this is something which is very trending, you see, which is very much trending. And then I am myself understanding what is virtual reality, what are the applications of this from technical perspective and from application perspective, and how artificial intelligence is actually going to be a game changer for future. And why not students of any discipline must be introduced with these kind of things. This is education 4.0, right? So these were my challenges of learning, and these were my challenges, opportunities also for learning. This is how I have grown basically. So now when I look at my own thing, and then, I left Flame. I was teaching in consultancy mode or full-time mode for various places. Now I'm dean of this institution called PP Savani University, and we have launched, of course, I'll talk about this in a while, about the liberal studies course that I'm doing here.
Yes,
but
I was coming on to that.
what I have done is very different from what others are doing. I'm not saying this is good or bad, because these are very relative terms, but this is something which must be looked at. So I have grown with my job, as everybody does, but I have also looked at the challenges as opportunities, and to the extent possible, go beyond the challenges. And that childhood streak of taking a decision and staying with that has made me stronger day by day. So, and in the present times of COVID, this is all the more challenging because everything is at a lower ebb right now. And in such kind of situation is actually a challenge to keep your soul lifted. I read a lot. I read a lot, in the sense that, and this reading habit, again, since childhood, because the teachers were very encouraging about the reading. You asked about my continuation from childhood to now, education and my career now. So 2-3 things were happening alongside, whether this was my educational, when I was a student. I'm still a student, but then when I was actually a student, and when I came up as a kind of from lecturer to now the dean's position, senior professor, etc., 2 things have stayed with me. One is reading. Now, come what may, I must read every day, 50 pages.
Wow.
And come what may, I must write 5 to 7 pages. It used to be 25, 50 pages at some point of time. So
Do
this
you
was
write
something
also,
which was,
how many books
I
you have
write.
written?
And
Books?
every day I must write something, either a fiction or a non-fiction poetry, something. Somebody told me, I'm forgetting the person's name. I met him somewhere, and he was an IAS officer of Rajasthan cadre. And he was also the Director General of Indian Institute of Public Administration in Delhi. So I'm forgetting his name. That gentleman is no more now. So he used to tell us that if you do not write, that part of your brain is decaying, So you must write, because writing something, putting, holding a pen in your hand on a piece of paper, it always regenerates that particular cell in the brain, which keeps you creative all the time.
Yes.
Because typing something on the laptop is something, your autocorrect option will keep correcting all your mistakes. But when you write something in hand, then you have to think 10 times before you actually use a particular word.
Yes.
Now, this is something which has stayed with me even today, and I'm very happy about it. And I keep telling my students that you must write. It's fine that you copy paste from somewhere else, but if you write something by looking at the text which you are going to copy, at least you will read that.
True.
So this is very important. This is very important. So writing, I do today also, and reading a particular book or couple of books together. So one day I have read this, maybe, I have lost interest or I'm losing my track in that particular book. I shift to another book, and then I start reading either my textbooks or reference books or whatever. So that I'll talk after a while. But then this is how the career has been so far. And it is going on. I mean, it is going on.
Great journey, Mr. Santosh Kumar. Now I here I want to know, even my viewers must be eager to know that what is this Liberal School of Arts, Liberal School of Education and Management Studies? Because as a layman, we are not so much comfortable with this term. We only know commerce hota hai, arts hota hai, science hota hai, but we don't know about this term. So kindly explain this, Janu.
Yeah. You see, this is basically liberal, which is creating all kind of confusion, and this has come in vogue very, very, very at a very fast pace, much faster pace than actually we understood. So it all started in USA, but let me give you the Indian perspective of it. Basically, there's nothing called a singular discipline, a single discipline, right? We have created these disciplinary boundaries in the later part of our educational or knowledge creation. Finally, it was an integrated knowledge where you are studying logic, you are understanding numbers, you are studying society, etc. From a very, very integral perspective. So if you look at the Indian traditions of knowledge creation, it was based on listening. It was based on reading, and it was based on dialogue,
Mm.
right? So whatever your guru said, you listened to that and you said the same thing. And it was not based on a particular discipline, it was based on the gyan or
Mm.
knowledge that was being created, which was about the worldview,
Mm.
or it was about the, the major things in life and how to lead a life. Now, when you say how to lead a life, it is not talking about spiritual or ritualistic things, you see.
Mm.
It also suggested that how it has to be looked from the social perspective. Now, because we know the meaning of the words social and political and economic, I can tell you about in this term. So when you look at the whole relatedness and interconnectedness of your life with everything,
Mm.
and then you try to understand everything at your own pace, in your own manner, and with your own interest, this becomes a very liberal way of looking at the world.
Okay.
So two, three things happen. Philosophically, liberal studies is talking about the integrated knowledge system,
Mm.
right? Which you study with your own way, in your own way, at your own liberty, and you have complete liberty to study what you want to study. You see, so education 3.0 or conventional education, what we say, if it tells you that you must study this, liberal studies is just opposite to that. It facilitates your learning what you want to learn. And this is very important because I have seen the disastrous cases in my class or in other places that people wanted actually to become an artist and they have become an engineer. So somehow, somewhere, they were able to compromise with their engineer's professional self. But at the heart of it, they were artists, and they became fabulous artists later on. So what if they had actually studied
Pursuit.
art?
Yes.
You see, this is the whole thing. Now, liberal studies functionally, how does it operate? You have to basically create a foundation of multidisciplinary perspective. From the multidisciplinary perspectives, you must know something about the civilization, you must know something about all those kind of things which makes your further specializations very prolific, you see, very, very profound. And then it talks about the horizontal spread of the knowledge.
Mm.
It can come from the different kind of universes. It can be from the science, it can be from the social science, it can be from humanities, it can be from the anthropological perspective, it can be from the historical perspective. So you must create a kind of foundation. You must know something about everything. Then you listen to the call of the heart, that this is what I actually want to do. So I want to study psychology because I'm very much keen on understanding how people think, how people behave, and how to basically resolve the conflict. And there are many people, believe me, there are many students who want to study psychology because they think they are very good listeners,
Mm.
right? Now, that is not the end of the psychology, but then this is what they feel. So they enter psychology. But point is studying psychology the only thing that they would want to do? No. They would also want to look at the therapeutic use of the tools which will help them to become a good psychologist. So a good liberal education must provide them with a kind of minor or supplementary subject. So I have seen my students doing clinical psychology major with a minor in music or
Wow.
art or paint form or dance, because this is not some, or plain singing.
Mm.
Or they have used psychology, or they have studied psychology, not the clinical part but the social psychology or sports psychology, and they have gone into those kind of disciplines. So basically this is what they wanted to study,
Yes.
and not their parents wanted them to study. Or somehow, in some of the cases, both of this gelled also. That parents also wanted them to study English and they also studied English, right? But in most of the cases, this does not happen because we see that in our generation, the present generation of the students, we as a parent, we are still taking decisions for our children, without allowing them actually to understand what they want to do. And it's a very good thing that the students are still confused. They have no idea as to what to do. I think that's the best segment of the students who are not decided as to they want to do economics or mechanical engineering, or they want to pursue commerce, which is fine, which is fine, because being in a confused state, and then you give them this kind of foundation in the liberal studies, which basically helps them to find their own understanding, and then you facilitate. So we have moved from pedagogy to andragogy, right? So pedagogy is something where you are teaching them, you are telling them what to do. Andragogy is where you are facilitating their learning process, and you want them to find what is it that interests them. So I generally give the example of Steve Jobs. I mean, he has said many things, and one of the things he said that when technology is married with the with technology, with liberal studies, when humanities has to be understood from the perspective of application in technological world, that's where the heart is singing, or that's where it becomes very important, interesting. Now look at the case of designing of the iPhone 10, which is supposed to be one of the best in the world right now. Now, when Steve Jobs and his team was working with the design and application development of that particular phone, believe me, 70% of the people who were working with them were products of the liberal education. Because these liberal studies education, liberal education students, they could understand the society and the technology from the single lens. So he had sociologists, he had anthropologists, he had, everybody from all possible disciplines. And that's how the iPhone is iPhone. I mean, iPhone 10 is iPhone 10. One of the best. You can only copy it, right? And you can build those features in the other phones. Well, I do not use iPhone 10 or anything, but I can understand the strength of that technology. And this is typical Industrial Revolution 4.0, to which liberal education as a response to education 4.0 comes, is blends beautifully. So, and in the present times also, a student of liberal education will be able to understand how COVID-19 is actually impacting us in 360-degree manner. The top, bottom, left, right, and center, we are impacted in some or other way from all directions. Now, this is something which has to be understood, and it's possible that many students who are just into their own discipline, they would like to look at this COVID from their disciplinary perspective, but a student of liberal education will look at each and every aspect of the this COVID-19 or any pandemic for that matter. I mean, look at the entire growth of this pandemic from the historical perspective. So you had it in 17th century, 18th century, 19th century, every 100 years this is happening. So and there's a documented history to all these pandemics in last at least 300 years time. And every 100 years, if it is happening, so what was the cause of it? How world responded to it, and how people believe, how people behaved in that particular point of time. So I was reading a particular article where, without much of the technological intervention in the last in the last pandemic, I think it was Spanish flu or something. So the technology had not developed as we see it today. And that also stayed for 200, almost 10 years or something. Many people died, but people did respond to that from whatever technological knowledge they had that at that point of time. So the literature is replete with such kind of thing. But point is, it is so multidisciplinary that you need to have that kind of mindset to understand what is being said there.
Very true. Here, I just want to tell you that the topic is very interesting, and even I am getting dived into it. But we have some limitation of time, so we have to move towards end of our spotlight program. At the end, I just want to know your message to today's student, right, who are looking for various disciplines and they are confused. As you already said, they need a proper guidance for that, right, if they are confused. So just a message, small message to today's student, how they will be pursuing ahead.
Yeah. So I think I'm as a teacher, I could tell them that study and study and study. I mean, just try to find out your interest, which is very important, whether this is international relations or any subject. Go beyond the boundaries of subject and study, and try to find out which is the best way of responding to your your intellectual urges. I mean, what is it that you want to do?
Mm.
I have always believed in one fact that please do not run after the marks. Marks will automatically follow the knowledge. So gain knowledge, and then don't worry about the marks. Marks will be there. Even if you have not been able to secure 95% or 98%, this is perfectly all right. That 60% actually will take you much ahead of the somebody who has secured 100%. Now, with due respect to the persons who have secured 100%, I have full respect for those students. But then we should also look at the knowledge which has come with whatever percentage has been secured. So don't run after the marks, run after the knowledge, because the future actually belongs to them who look at the knowledge in a very, very interdisciplinary perspective. And at at SLM in our university, I'm basically trying to promote that. So the message would be very clear that read and write and try to gain from whatever situations you are faced with. Because unless until we learn, we will not grow. And the future belongs to those who want to grow and who will grow. Because there cannot be any full stop on learning, and it has to be, the blinkers must be removed, uh, which has been there for a very, very long time. And this is definitely not a very good idea to remain with those, myopic visions and all. Blinkers must be removed. So read, write, grow in all possible directions, and try to find out what is it that you want to actually read, or what is it that you want to study. This is very important. And all the best to all the students.
Thank you so much, Mr. Santosh Kumar, for being with me in the spotlight, right? And I promise, and I'm 100% sure that now onwards, students will be thinking on gaining knowledge and not to run after percentages, right? So with that note, we take your leave, and I promise you to come up with some new personality who's again going to share their success stories in Spotlight with Abha. Till then,
Thank you. Thank
namaskar.
you so much, Abaji,
Yeah.
for giving me this particular opportunity of interacting with you. It was actually a very fascinating experience for me also. Otherwise, one does not get an opportunity such as this one. So thank you very much, and looking forward to having conversation with you again. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Namaskar.